Hello class, and welcome to week 3 of Human Nutrition. So last week, we had the opportunity to look at our dietary guidelines and our things that we use to guide us in order to be able to create a healthy diet. So as we saw, we started with the DRIs, and there were lots of different layers to that. We talked about RDAs, and we talked about ULs, and we talked about AIs. And basically, all of those, we have to remember, are based in science. So we always are looking at those as being the basis on what we know currently in terms of what people need in order to be healthy. Now, as we found, those are great numbers, but they're not always so user-friendly. So we kind of can look at these guidance systems in terms of a progression. So we start with those DRIs that are based in science, and then because those aren't so user-friendly, we need to come up with something that is a little bit more usable for the average person. So we have our dietary guidelines, which are kind of just a list of what we should be doing. And then from there, we also have our picture representations of what our diet should look like. So we have my plate. And while we certainly can look at the pros and cons, which we did for our discussion, we know that that's very helpful for people in order to be able to look at just a picture rather than having to think about those numbers, which may not make that much sense to them. So when we look at our discussion, hopefully you had a good time last week where we had the opportunity to either explore my plate or alternatives, and then also look a little bit deeper into label reading. So again, both of those are going to be very helpful when we look at making nutritious choices. And whether you agree with my plate or not, or whether you felt like the Harvard healthy eating plate was a little bit better, you all did a great job when you chose that discussion of coming up with those pros and cons and supporting your feelings and your thoughts behind which one was better. Regardless of how you felt about my plate, I have to say that it's a great start. And certainly there are some downsides in terms of not helping people to make specific choices within each food group. But if you have the average consumer who might be starting from scratch and doesn't have any idea what a healthy, nutritious diet is, if we can at least get them started thinking about more fruits and vegetables and a little bit less protein, and then the rest of it maybe being some grains or starchy vegetables, I think that's a really good place to start. We also found that the nutrition information facts on our food labels is going to be invaluable for us as we are trying to sort through all of the foods that are out there. We go into the grocery store and we're bombarded with so many different food choices that this really gives us a good way of looking at foods and saying, okay, which cereal should I choose when I'm faced with that whole big section of cereals? How can I have some information that will guide me to make the best choice? So this week we're going to shift gears a little bit and kind of get into a little bit more of the physiology of our bodies and the physiology of nutrition. So this week we're going to be looking at body systems and how they relate to nutrition and how nutrition relates to them. So while all of our systems are very important, we're going to be looking mostly at the digestive system, as this system is the one that probably most closely relates to nutrition. Because even if we are taking in the most nutritious foods possible, we looked at my plate and we looked at dietary guidelines and DRIs and we're like, okay, this is the best diet possible. If our digestive system isn't doing its job and functioning correctly, we're not going to be able to get those nutrients from our foods. We need to be able to break them down, so digest them. We need to be able to absorb them and actually get them out of our digestive system and into our bloodstream or our lymphatic system where we can transport them throughout our body. And then we actually need to be able to metabolize them or do something with them. So we'll see that having a healthy functioning digestive system is very important to our overall health. while we hope that our digestive system does function as it should, we know that that doesn't always happen. And I see that a lot with my clients that I work with, is that they have all sorts of digestive things that go wrong, whether it's something like heartburn, or we're going to be learning that it's not just called heartburn, but when it gets more severe, it's GERD, gastroesophageal reflux disease. It might be irritable bowel syndrome, or inflammatory bowel disease, or gallstones, or a lot of different things that can go wrong with our digestive system. And while certainly medications are a potential treatment at times, I find that we can do a lot with changing our diet. So it might be changing what we eat. We might have to eliminate some things that we just don't digest very well. And then also looking at some lifestyle factors for a lot of these as well. We're going to see that there's a very strong brain gut connection. And so we're going to see that for some of our diseases, a lot of being stressed or being under some sort of emotional load can have a negative impact. You know, we probably have all had that upset stomach from being stressed. So sometimes it's a lifestyle change as well. Other things like constipation. Exercise helps us with that, because exercise not only gets our skeletal muscles moving, but it also gets our smooth muscles of our intestines working as well. So you are going to have the opportunity to actually explore a few of our digestive problems, as you have a couple to choose from in our discussions this week. In addition, you are also going to have the opportunity of following a food that you eat through your digestive system. Not literally, but in our assignment. So we're going to be looking at, well, what nutrients does that food have? And then thinking about how does that food get broken down at each point along in our digestive system. As we're going to learn, we have the digestive tract, which we kind of think of as a hollow tube that starts in our mouth and goes all the way down to the very end through your stomach, small intestines, large intestines. Then we also are going to be looking at our accessory organs. So things like our gallbladder and our liver and our pancreas. So each one plays a very important role. So as you go through and do your assignment, you're going to be thinking about what happens to the food at each point along the way. Sometimes it's a mechanical thing. So, for example, chewing in our mouth. We're physically breaking down that food into smaller pieces as we chew it up. We also have a lot of chemicals that are going to be involved. So things like acid in your stomach. We have a lot of enzymes that are found in your stomach, in your small intestine, even in your mouth. So as we go through and talk about those chemicals, I want you to be as specific as possible. So instead of just saying enzymes, I want you to think about, well, what kinds of enzymes? Is it a protease that breaks down protein? Is it an amylase that breaks down starch, or a lipase that breaks down lipids? So I want you to think as specifically as possible as you're doing this whole assignment. So I think it's going to be a great assignment to really get a good handle on what happens in our digestive system. Because as we continue our journey through this semester, we're going to be looking at our big nutrients and also vitamins and minerals, and we need to understand how our body is able to use those in terms of digestion, absorption, and metabolism. So this will kind of set the stage for future lectures. So with that, I am going to wish you a wonderful week, and I look forward to seeing you in discussion.